Good morning, committee. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 556. Amelia, will you give us an overview?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 556 relates to Kansas adjusted gross income for purposes of income taxation and would provide a subtraction modification for work opportunity tax credit and employee retention credit disallowances. The bill would amend KSA 2021 Sup 7932-117 subsection C to include in the subtraction modification from federal adjusted gross income in the provision found in paragraph 10, the amount of the work opportunity tax credit and similar disallowances under 26 U.S.C. section 280C, and to provide for tax years beginning after December 31st, 2019 and ending before January 1, 2022, that the provisions of the paragraph would also apply to the employee retention credit, and the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, our first conferee is Carol Cassell. Welcome, Carol.
Good morning, Chair Tyson and members of the committee. I'm Carol Cassell. I'm a CPA with My CPAs, Inc. in our offices here in Topeka. Our firm serves many clients who are in the restaurant and hospitality industry and assists with their tax compliance efforts. This bill addresses a concern regarding the Kansas treatment of the employee retention tax credit. Essentially, the current treatment causes Kansas to tax this amount twice, once because the Kansas Department of Revenue has disallowed the modification for the employer taxpayer, and once when the employee reports this as taxable income on their individual returns. We believe this is inconsistent with other programs and deserves to be corrected so as not to cause additional liability within an industry that has been severely impacted with COVID, the associated mandates, and the lingering effects, supply chain, et cetera. The employee retention credit was introduced in the CARES Act and first became effective March 31st, 2020. Subsequent COVID-related legislation enhanced it. It expired September 30th, 2021, so it was only in effect for 2020 and 2021. The federal ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, was available to small and mid-sized businesses during 2020 and 2021. The purpose of the credit was to encourage employers who had been impacted by the COVID mandates to retain their staffing instead of laying people off. So businesses that were significantly impacted by the pandemic were eligible for the ERTC. In 2020, it was available to smaller employers, those with 100 full-time employees or fewer. For 2021, it was expanded and was available to employers with 500 or fewer full-time employees. Again, for wages paid from January 1 through September 30th, 2021, provided there was a local mandate in place that caused the facility to not be fully open and to be impacted by that mandate. The CARES Act referenced the ERTC tax treatment by a reference to IRC Section 280CA. Under IRC Section 280CA, a taxpayer does not include the credit in their income, but they're disallowed a deduction from the wages by the amount of the credit. This is consistent with the federal tax treatment of other hiring credits, such as the work opportunity tax credit. The amount of the credit offsets the wages the employer can deduct at the federal level. Kansas statutes provide for a modification to taxable income to restore the deduction for wages disallowed at the federal level for hiring credits. The language in Kansas statute section 7932117 references modifications to Kansas adjusted gross income And this is a subtraction from adjusted gross income modification. It's logical because no Kansas tax benefit was received by the employer taxpayer. The Kansas Department of Revenue has taken the position there will not be a modification allowed to restore the deduction for wages for which the employer received the employee retention tax credit. The position has been adopted even though the Federal CARES Act and the IRS treat the ERTC as a jobs credit under Section 280C. And Kansas Statute 7932117 provides for modification to reduce Kansas taxable income by the amount of targeted jobs tax credit and work incentive credits disallowed at the federal level under Section 280C. Again, this result is that Kansas taxes these wages twice, at the employer taxpayer level by the disallowed deduction, and at the employee level because they're taxable wages to the employee. It would be appropriate to pass this bill updating the language of 7933117CX to include the employee retention credit. The effective dates for the change would be 2020 and 2021. Thank you, and I'll respond to questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Carol. Committee questions? I have a minor question. Well, it could be major, I guess. I see that it would sunset this in 2022. Would it be prudent to not sunset it in case that is available again in future years and we wouldn't have to be back here again?
Because we don't know what will happen with the pandemic or subsequent versions of it, it may be appropriate or simply to address in the legislation the federal credits, federal employment-related credits in general.
Thank you. Committee, our next conferee is Hugh O'Reilly. Welcome, Hugh.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. My name is Hugh O'Reilly, Jr. I'm an owner-operator for McDonald's in Ottawa and Emporia, Kansas. First of all, let me thank all of you for the guidance and assistance that the state of Kansas provided to small businesses throughout the pandemic. Whether it was the deductibility of meals or creating more clarity on how the emergency management plan operates in Kansas, it was difficult for everyone, and I appreciate your willingness to lean into the issue. It was a great example of how the government and business can work together during difficult times. And with that said, it would appear that the pandemic is hopefully behind us, but I believe the economic impacts and effects are not and will likely play out for many years to come. That's why I'm here today. The ERTC, or Employee Retention Tax Credit, was very effective in allowing me to run my business during the locally mandated lockdowns. It helped me to retain my staff and even offer them hero pay. When transactions were decreasing. Like many small businesses, we remained operational by utilizing our drive-thrus, offering delivery, and providing takeout options to serve our communities. The pandemic forced us to scrutinize every dollar we spent like never before because we were operating in uncharted territory. I was surprised, as many other small business owners, that this tax credit was not treated in the same fashion as the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. I had no idea that these ERTC wages would be disallowed as an expense, causing me to pay additional tax at a time when I need all my resources available to address commodity cost increases, staffing shortages, and supply chain issues. This oversight cost my organization approximately $20,000 in 2020 and another $13,000 in 2021. These are unplanned expenses for my organization during a time when I am still trying to recover from the economic impact of the pandemic and now new inflationary issues. This unexpected expense is severe and will hurt the small businesses in Kansas who cooperated with local governments to serve our communities and keep everyone safe from the virus. I'm asking you today to please review the tax treatment of the ERTC, treated similarly to that of the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to testify for the bill as a proponent? We do not have any opponents. Is there anyone that would like to testify as an opponent to the bill? Is there anyone that would like to testify neutral to the bill? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 556. Committee, we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 554. Thank you, Amelia.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 554 relates to property taxation and the classification of land devoted to agricultural use. The bill would amend KSA 791476 to include in the definition of land devoted to agricultural use, land utilized by zoos that hold a valid Class C exhibitor license issued by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and also to include land otherwise devoted to the production of plants, animals, or horticultural products that is incidentally used for agritourism activity as defined in KSA 32-1432. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Do you know, or are you aware, are there zoos that do not have a Class C exhibitor license, or is that a question for someone else?
That would probably be a question for revenue,
Okay.
I would think. Yeah, we'll ask if they're willing. Yeah.
We had this young lady in front of us, and I thought, well, I'll see if I can put her on the spot. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for Amelia? Thank you, Amelia. Committee, we have one proponent for the bill. It's written testimony. Matt Fouts from Wichita. I would draw your attention to that. Is there, oh, are you here? I'm sorry, Matt. You are welcome to testify. My apologies. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair and committee, for letting me testify on behalf of this bill. My name is Matt Fouts. I'm the director of Tanganyika Wildlife Park, just on the west edge of Wichita and Goddard. I'm in support of this bill, obviously, as a zoo in Kansas here. And, you know, for us, over 35 years ago, my parents, Jim and Sherry, had a dream of building a world-class breeding facility for rare and endangered species. And being natives to Wichita, they chose to build it in Goddard on the edge there. And so they started out with 10 acres of land and built some barns and started breeding rare and endangered species. Over time, they were very successful at it and wanted to expand. And they kind of came to a crossroad around 2000 where they really had to make the choice. Do we just settle for the impact that we've currently had with the species, or do we expand? And hopefully most of you know that they chose to expand. They decided to build Tanganyika Wildlife Park. And they built it on 30 adjacent acres to where most of the facilities were. Now, this was important because it allowed us to take on additional species like African penguins, who their population in the wild has been decimated over the last 3 or 4 decades. It's declined by over 90%. But they're a very expensive animal to take care of. They are endangered. Or an animal like the Indian rhino, where is also endangered but costs as much as $50 a day to care for. Even our giraffe herd, which we have one of the largest herds in the country, is going through a silent extinction. And so it's critical in order to preserve their species that there be breeding facilities like ours. Now, when we decided to change from just a breeding facility and allow people to come in and view those animals, see those animals, our property tax, we went from an agricultural facility to basically a commercial facility, and our property tax jumped from $7,000 on agricultural land to over $50,000. We're still there breeding animals, but because now we have that commercial aspect, our property tax increased significantly, and that was a huge burden for us as we first started out. You know, we didn't have a lot of revenue or anything, and so that was a big hurdle. We were able to overcome, but even as we continue or think about our future and expanding, during COVID in 2020, we were thinking about adding a drive-through safari park because, you're in your own car, you're socially distanced. A lot of places were having success with that. And we have additional land that's available to us that we're looking at building it on. But again, that land would go from an agricultural assessment to now commercial assessment and jump tens of thousands of dollars, even though it's basically a giant pasture for animals that a car happens to be driving through. So it's impacting us. But I know more so than us, it's also impacting agritourism in the state. Other facilities, I was at a winery just south of Lewisburg 2 weeks ago, or a couple of wineries, and those are, you're starting to see a lot more of those vineyards and stuff pop up around the state. And, those specifically are just less than 10 minutes from the Missouri border, pulling tourism into our state. And so for other places like vineyards, pumpkin patches, zoos like, Deanna Rose in Overland Park, agritourism type businesses, of course, Rolling Hills and Salina, that are playing an important role in our economy and in our state, not only for our citizens, but to bring tourism. These are things that can help those types of facilities. Kansas doesn't have much in the way of beaches or mountains. We don't have any iconic attractions like a Disney or a Six Flags. What we do have is agritourism, hunting, fishing, the great zoos like the ones I mentioned, vineyards. So the state has made great efforts over the years to support these industries, and the new agritourism initiatives by the Kansas Tourism, like the designation for registration for agritourism, have been great in supporting those industries. And I think that this bill will continue those efforts in helping drive tourism to our state. And, a rising tide raises all ships. So with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Committee, any questions? Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, thanks for being here today.
Yes.
So for better or for worse, I have a winery. And this whole thing about agritourism really kind of catches my attention when you're making the argument of that. To me, Kansas wineries that are actually growing Kansas grapes, okay, and not importing, say, juice from California, whatever, that to me is agritourism because those wineries are growing stuff domestic to the area. I guess my question to you is that, are your animals primarily exotic? I mean, is there natural environs, Kansas?
No. I mean, we're a zoo, so most of our animals are exotic, but we do breed here and then supply other zoos around the country and internationally.
Okay, and I was just curious, I'm just asking this question. Did you guys ever go to the Department of Agriculture and get their thoughts on if this, just what their thoughts of this would be as far as an agritourism type of a thing? I'm just curious.
No. I'd been working with the appraiser's office. I forgot the formal name of it. And this was the recommendation as far as kind of where to go next. So that's where I started.
And that's not really your responsibility, so I was just curious if you just visited with that department. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Committee, Senator Solentrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Did you mention that there's similar venues like yours that are taxed at a commercial rate? Did you mention Rolling Hills and Swan?
Yeah, so I know what some, and it's kind of in the written testimony a little bit, I didn't speak to it today, but like some of the other places, Rolling Hills is one of the only other privately owned facilities. And I think that they have their land parceled up a little bit to where the commercial piece is smaller and then the rest of it is, I don't think it's assessed at agriculture. I think they have a nonprofit, so that it goes under the nonprofit rates. And again, I'm not an expert on tax assessments. So I think that's how they're able to do it. Unfortunately, the way the park is built, we're not able to really parcel it off like that. And that's what I've seen from other agritourism type businesses, in some instances, not all. Some are able to, well, we'll just chop up the land so that part of it gets assessed to agriculture and part of it gets assessed commercially, but.
And if I may, your whole property is being assessed commercial?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask you the question that I'd ask our revisor. Are you able to enlighten the committee or educate the committee regarding a Class C exhibitor license for a zoo? Are there some zoos in Kansas that would not have a Class C exhibitor license?
No, no, all zoos are required to have a Class C. If you are open to the public, that's the definite. The Class C exhibitor license is you're exhibiting to the public. So in order to exhibit to the public, you have to have the Class C license. So you could have a Class B license is basically just a breeding license. That's what we used to have before we let the public come to the park. But when you start allowing the public to come, you have to become a Class C license under USDA.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So there are properties in southeast Kansas where they breed wildlife, elk, other somewhat exotic animals, not giraffe and those type of things, but they would be probably classified as agriculture use because they do not technically allow people to come and view the animals, although a lot of us will drive by and stop alongside the road and look at them. Would that be correct? Your understanding would be that they would be classified as agriculture use, most likely?
Well, they should. They probably currently are still classified as agricultural because they don't have the public aspect. So with agritourism, where you get into, you have that integration of what is agricultural, but now you're integrating a commercial aspect, right? You're either selling kind of directly to the public a product that you're producing there, or doing services there. And so you get this commercial aspect now on agricultural land, and and there really isn't a precedent for it in the current code. It gets thrown down to the county for the county to decide, and for the most part, they just pick whichever one's most expensive. And so that's where you kind of get not in trouble, but that difficulty, where a facility like ours, where we're talking 60 to 100 acres, being assessed at a commercial rate as opposed to, it's not a retail business, or a restaurant being, in a smaller footprint. This is a massive operation it takes to care for these animals, but we're having to pay a commercial rate because we do allow visitors to come.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Faust, for being here. And Madam Chairman, I'm shocked that any government entity would try to go the most expensive route on taxpayers.
Sure you are, Senator. Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Senator Solentrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would it behoove us, rather than trying to deal with the current classifications of these types of properties, would it behoove us to create a new class of some sort?
Thank you, Senator. That would be an option because of the time constraint that we're under. We felt that this might be the route for this year, but no, that absolutely should be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Matt. Committee, any other, is there anybody else that would like to testify as a proponent for the bill? Opponents for the bill, committee, I draw your attention to written testimony from Eric Sartoris, League of Municipalities. Is there anybody that would like to testify as an opponent? For neutral testimony, committee, I would draw your attention to written only from John Donley, Kansas Farm Bureau, and Rachel Willis, Kansas Department of Commerce. Is there anybody that would like to testify neutral on the bill? Seeing none. Committee, PVD is here. Would you mind answering a couple of questions for us? I know it kind of puts you on the spot, but I appreciate you being here, David.
Good morning, David Harper, Division of Property Valuation for the Department of Revenue. I could probably answer a couple questions on, we did some research on zoos on Friday.
Would you please?
So what we found, and I believe a fiscal note is coming over to you this morning, but what we found is it did require a Class C exhibitor license. We found 29 of those in the state of Kansas. And again, as the prior speaker said, I think we did not find any that, we're not aware of any that do not have that exhibitor license. I did want to state that 19 of those are currently exempt. Primarily, those appear to be ones that are city-owned zoos. So 19 of the 29 are exempt. The others, and I wasn't aware of the proponent on the bill, but I was looking at his on the spreadsheet, and he's correct. We have that as commercial, and it does appear that we still have a portion of it broken out as agricultural. Don't know the acreage on that, but the others are mixed. The ones that are taxed are mixed of commercial or commercial/agricultural use.
So, so that would leave 9 left? Are they all, the other 9 commercial also?
Yes, they're a combination. There's some agricultural land on some of them as well as the commercial. So some of them are mixed-use parcels.
And does it depend on which county you're in as to how it's
It
being?
should not. It should not. It should depend on productivity. Are you producing wildlife? And I think the statute, the key term that's referenced is production of animals. So that's what it should depend on, is the actual use of the land.
Okay. Committee, any other questions? Did you have any other information for us?
You know, I would just state that the fiscal impact is small. I guess small is a relative number. It was a small number we calculated for the school for the 20 meals, those being taxed. It only comes up to $18,370 for the 20 meals that's generated off those that are currently on the tax roll. One thing I'd say, and I'm far from being our division's ag expert, in talking to our folks, I think one thing that would help if this bill does move forward to remove some of the subjectivity is our ag values are based on productivity of the land. And if zoos were going to be classified as ag, probably clarifying in statute, are they pasture, are they grassland, what would they be, I think would be help in a uniform application of that across the board. And that's something we could probably put together pretty quickly with the reviser if you'd like us to have that conversation. But I think that would add to the uniformity. The other thing we just noticed, there's two provisions in this bill. One's for the zoos, one's for the agritourism. One thing we noticed, it just references land only. So there'd be the question then, the buildings on the land, would the intent be to classify those as agriculture as well?
Well, it's my experience, you do not want your buildings classified agriculture.
Okay.
That would be a,
Okay, but I'm just stating, just to bring to your attention that buildings are not referenced, so they would probably continue to be classified based on their use. So if you have a store where you're selling your product, probably that's still going to be
commercial.
commercial, yes.
Makes sense. Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Do you think that this would make sense to break out another classification on its own, or?
I think it would require a constitutional change.
That's what I was afraid of, and I don't think we want to go there. So, I'm sorry. Committee, any other questions then? No, we would welcome your input and any suggestions you had for clarification on the language. That'd be great. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody that would like to testify neutral then? No. Okay. Committee, we'll close the hearing. I lost my notes. I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 554, and committee will open the hearing on Senate Bill 319. Thank you for coming in today.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 319 relates to judicial foreclosure public auctions for purposes of collection of delinquent property taxes and would require the public auction be conducted in person at a physical location in the county. KSA 79-2804 sets forth the procedure for the sale of delinquent real estate after the entry of judgment and foreclosure actions and requires that the sheriff's sale be held through public auction. The bill would amend KSA 79-2804 to require that the public auction be open to the public, held in person at a physical location in the county, and be conducted in a manner that provides access to members of the public to gather and interact in person, to listen, to view, and observe the bidding as bids are submitted, and to be able to bid in person. The bill also provides that bids by online or electronic means of communication may be allowed, in addition to bids by those physically present. But no such auction or bidding shall be conducted solely online or by electronic means. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the Register.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, are there any hearings, or, excuse me, any questions for Amelia? Seeing none, thank you. Is Senator Haley online? No. Committee, we're going to go a little bit out of order. Usually we would start with the proponents. Senator Haley's not here, so we will start with the opponents. Sheriff Easter. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Good morning, Chairwoman Tyson and committee. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm speaking to you as the Sheriff of Sedgwick County, not as KSA. I represent Kansas Sheriff's Association as well, but this bill is in particular to something that we have going on in Sedgwick County at this point. There's 2 other counties within the state of Kansas that do online auction. For years, Sheriff's Office in Sedgwick County has done the same thing, continue to do the same thing as of right now. The problem is Sedgwick County is really big, and our auctions 2 times a year are huge. And so it takes up approximately 15 personnel, the hours in between all of that, plus a lawyer to put all the packets together, plus the auctioneer. I do not do the auctioneer stuff myself like some fellow sheriffs do. And so we started looking at 6 months ago going to the online process because it is a savings on tax dollars. It's a savings when it comes to personnel because for us, it involves not only sheriff's personnel, but it involves finance and also involves the treasurer's office. And so currently this bill would preclude us from going to the online type auctions, plus 2 other counties that currently have it. And so that's why I'm here testifying today in hopes that you would vote no to that provision. And it still allows all other sheriffs to continue the auctions as they have them as to this day. That's pretty much all I have today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sheriff, thanks for being here today. A couple of questions, Madam Chair. First one would be is that, so the proponent of the bill, my understanding is he's not precluding you from using online. He's just saying that you would have to have basically a live auction as part of that deal.
He's precluding going from online only.
Okay. Some more questions, Madam Chair? Okay. Sheriff, describe for me the types of things that you guys, the things that you're auctioning and who basically is buying these at auction.
So it's numerous things that come into the counties where they are taken because of delinquent taxes. So anything from property to items that they own. Mainly what we deal with is a lot of properties is mainly what we deal with. And you have all kinds of citizens that attend the auctions that buy these items.
And so are you noticing a change in the type of customers, say if you were to have a live auction versus the ones using the online? I mean, who's the preponderance, who are these entities that are buying these foreclosed properties or these assets? Are they banks? Are they financial institutions?
No.
Who are they?
No, a lot of them are folks that are going to turn around and rent those properties back out.
Okay. So from a transparency standpoint, why would you not want to have a live auction where actually the public could actually come and physically interact and discuss? I guess my concern, so let me throw that out there. Argue against a more transparent process by doing this live.
Because you get the same transparency on an online auction too. We've went and viewed some of the online auctions that are taking place actually right here in Shawnee County. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing as transparency when people testify on Zoom, in our opinion. And so what it comes down to is saving taxpayer money for the type of auctions that we are required to do by the state.
But Sheriff, you got to have then somebody that probably is a little more tech savvy, don't you? From the standpoint of they have to have online access, they have to have some sort of a bidding system to get at this stuff,
Yeah, it's a
right?
company that we would contract with that does all of that for us.
Okay, and this, if I'm running on here, you can shut me down.
No,
I'll
I was
stop.
gonna clarify, I think he was asking about the bidder, not the host of the auction, for the technology availability.
Oh, I understand. So I'm sorry, I took that as who would set that up for transparency reasons is a company that puts all of the online auction on. If you're asking from a standpoint of individuals that utilize technology, we have a lot of stuff online already that the public's very aware of. Would that have to be an education process? Yeah, absolutely, it'd have to come with that.
And are those one more question? Sure. And are those bidding firms, Madam Chair, are they charging the buyers that go through those platforms, are they charging them fees or subscriptions or?
The one that we're looking at now charges us, the county, for their services.
But they don't charge the buyers anything, the prospective?
Not that we have seen yet, no.
Do they do that?
There is some that can, but that's why we're not going with those folks.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Solentrop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morning, Sheriff.
Morning.
I would assume that, these properties that are being sold, real estate in particular, if someone doesn't have access to technology, they're probably not a likely buyer. Probably don't have the means to purchase these properties anyway and turn them back out for rent or whatever. So to me, I think, there's a certain element or class of people that are going to look at these properties, purchase them and make use of them and so forth. And if you don't have access to basic technology to allow you to get online, you're probably don't have the means to even buy a lot of this property.
I would say that is somewhat true. The other thing that we're looking at here doing is putting up kiosks inside the county building so that folks that do not have access to technology would be able to access these public auctions at the county building. Yes, sir.
Nice service as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. As far as conducting online auctions, well, to begin with, I'm going to back up just a little bit. In parts of the state, a lot of these properties, because I have purchased a significant amount of property from property tax sales the sheriff has conducted, and they may go for anywhere from $50 to there's no top end. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't really have anything to do with the person's ability to afford the property, and particularly in rural areas, they're not necessarily going to be into technology. But as far as technology auction, in my county, it's a one-day deal. It takes all day long, and that's Montgomery, which is a little smaller than Sedgwick. But do you have these auctions online as a one-day or drawn out over multiple days?
Right now, we're looking at it keeping the same, that currently the way we practice it now, it's a one-day auction. We generally have 2, but there are times that we will have 3 or 4, depending on how many properties have been brought into the treasurer's office for us to auction off. But those are one day. We don't see that changing on the online, though.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Then my next question or other question, have you seen a difference in the price? Because this is one of those issues where this property is for sale because someone, a deadbeat taxpayer, did not pay their taxes. So you want to get the best amount of money you can to pay the taxes for the taxpayers to help keep property taxes down for the rest of the taxpayers. But then again, the investors, like me, want the lowest price possible. My question is, are you seeing or do you have enough history to know, has the price gone down through the online or has it gone up that you're receiving for a variety of properties? And I realize that it's a little difficult to compare because you're dealing with different properties. It's sort of an apple and oranges type of thing, but can you give us your best guess?
I'm sorry, I can't. That is something that I would have to go back and ask our folks what they're seeing, and it's Topeka and I believe Wyandotte County are the both that are using online. So that's something we would have to ask their treasurer's office to see if they're seeing that at all. I don't have an answer for that one.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Well, thank you, Sheriff Easter, and thank you for your service, too.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Next would be Jay Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jay Hall for the Kansas Association of Counties. I want to acknowledge the diligence and the kindness of the chair to allow me to present. I also apologize to the committee assistant for not getting my testimony into you on time. You will have that this afternoon. I will be brief today. Sheriff Easter actually covered a lot of the points that I was going to cover. Currently, there are only 2 counties that are conducting these auctions online. That's Wyandotte and Shawnee. And they are conducting them, but making it also available. They both have kiosks or computers that are also available so that somebody, if they don't have access to a computer or something like that, they can actually come to the courthouse or to an auction site. But as Sheriff Easter mentioned, it does cut down on the amount of county personnel that it takes to run one of these types of auctions because these are all-day events. And when you have an all-day event like that, you have several, as many as a dozen people that are involved in trying to make sure that those things happen efficiently. I would also note that it does take a bit of education, but Shawnee County and Wyandotte County have both provided that information. And if the committee would like, I can supply you with the education that they actually put out in advance of their auctions so that the committee can see that. Ultimately, this just increases government efficiency, and I don't think we should restrict that. And with that, I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Jay. Committee, any questions? Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick ones. So Jay, I want to go back to the quote-unquote deadbeat taxpayer. Does this suppress that taxpayer's ability to go back and try to get back their property?
Well, under the tax sale laws, a taxpayer, once that item actually goes to the tax sale, they cannot purchase it at that time. They could, prior to the tax sale, redeem that property, and there's a process in the statute for redeeming that property. But once it is at sale, they cannot purchase that property at the sale themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Committee, I draw your attention to Jesse Loomis, written testimony only as an opponent. Senator Haley has joined us as a proponent for the bill. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate your patience and your indulgence. I think that Tom Day actually brings an interesting point to having hands-on as he was opening the gate to allow us, a long stream of us here that were parking today. And it goes a little bit to what 319 is, of which I am proponent. I was pleased to hear some of the opponent testimony because you do have my written testimony. Let me extend my gratitude, if I can, Madam Chair, to your assistant, Mr. Gaunt, for helping to bring this to fruition. I'll be brief. This didn't exist. We wouldn't be having this issue were it not for some of the restrictions that were put in place due to COVID. You know, having tax sales on the courthouse steps, as the vernacular was, and making sure there's a level of transparency when government conducts business is something that for time immemorial has not been brought into question. We're here at this point now, as we know, we've returned to in-person, whether it's the conducting of committee hearings or the legislature, or even judicial trials. We extended speedy trial because we couldn't have juries impaneled during COVID. Government was suspended for in-person. Senate Bill 319 just wants to ensure we have continuity in what was legislative intent, time immemorial, for delinquent tax property sales or what have you. If we're going to change the statute, that if that's what we want to do, because now, as the opponents suggest, it's just more efficient, it's easier to streamline and to have everything online as opposed to meeting in person. If that's legislative intent, if that's what this committee wants to do, to tweak the statute, but the word public, at least for many of my constituents who have been disaffected by the aggressive sales that have been held online in Wyandotte County, they abused it. They simply abused it. They put portfolios together in Wyandotte County for tax sales that were 3 held since the pandemic. And all of those were for people who are marginal in their ability to access the web or to access the equipment. Some have been characterized here as deadbeat taxpayers, but those who would otherwise have been afforded the opportunity if they did not have to know how to work a computer or have access to broadband, they would have been afforded an opportunity to have face-to-face, as was intended in the original, I believe, KSA 792801, the right of specific, interactive, physical, I won't say confrontation, but access to that authority that's stripping them, and many times, of their real property right. So our concern is and continues to be, now let me say, in closing, and certainly I want to stand for questions, Wyandotte County may not be an abuser anymore. We have a new administration, and the people in my community rallied and said, look, you're having these systematic online tax sales. We've had 3, again, in a year and a half. Topeka is going to be following or has followed suit. And the government, local government heard and suspended them. So 2 of them have been suspended. The next one may be next month, but we have a new government, new sheriff in town, if you will, and a new mayor and administration. They recognize the inherent right to have a public sale. Don't mind a hybrid. In other words, the actual physical presence with the opportunity for those to participate online as well. But the intent of the statute originally is that the word public would mean physically in person. Don't want to interrupt government efficiency, but I would hope that we could return, if you would, Madam Chair and members, to the original legislative intent that never contemplated we'd have a pandemic that would suspend public meaning in physical. And with that, I'd be pleased to stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Helly, for bringing this bill to us. Committee, any questions? Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I did spend more than 20 minutes downstairs waiting for the gates to open as well. Interesting days. Beware the Ides of March. Curious, were hybrid used at all in Wyandotte County or only virtual auction?
Madam Chair, Senator Baumgardner, we have had a series, it's increased. There's been an escalation of those who are participating not only locally, but as we know, worldwide in these tax sales, and they're able to bid on those. I am not really sure to what extent they were had. I actually became aware of this during the course of COVID. I do know that there have been some that have been conducted in person, but I don't know to what extent the option to be online was participated in. And again, I think that's perfectly fine to have that option too, but the right of direct participation is what we're hoping to uphold by the original intent of the statute.
Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you. I think it might be helpful to find out from research if any hybrid auctions, in fact, auction houses are finding that the hybrid is the most successful. So it would be interesting to see if any of those cities actually used hybrid or if they were virtual only during COVID. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll ask Eddie if he has time to reach out to a couple of the counties that are doing it and get some data from them. Thank you. Any other questions for Senator Haley? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Haley, appreciate you bringing forth this legislation. Apparently, you and I have done a lot of business in this arena. Do you know, is Wyandotte County still, for all of these virtual auctions, meeting the publication in the newspaper of the 3 weeks prior to the sale? Have they, to your knowledge, been meeting that?
Well, Madam Chair, Senator Peck, to my knowledge, they are meeting the test of publication notice. Now, there have been some people who have been behind on their taxes who have suggested that they did not have notice once the tax sales resumed. They knew, of course, that they were behind and there had been some previous notice. But since they have been reinstated, there were some that said, well, I didn't know. No one told me that the tax sales were being held. I didn't know where to go. I would call the county and get, press 1 for this, and was not able to access anyone personally. Our county has said that if you need more information and you don't have a computer, you feel free to come to one of many kiosks that are available through the county downtown and access the county's kiosks or the computer. Frankly, some of my constituents are not computer savvy and just have not had adequate notice, but it would be, I think, unfair to suggest that the notices aren't out there somewhere. They may have been published in the local newspaper. Many don't take that as well, but there were some previous statements, but not current ones.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, we're about to lose the room. Are there any other questions for Senator Haley? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
And I'm grateful for your patience in this endeavor, Madam Chair, and for having this hearing. I hope you'll work the bill at the appropriate time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any other proponents for the bill? Is there anybody that would like to testify as an opponent? Are there any neutral testimony? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 313. Thank you, committee. And is there any other business to be brought before us? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.